At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them, and he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes such child in my name welcomes me. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea."
So we have a real treat this morning. We've got Justin and Logan Campbell. I'm going to invite you guys, if you want to come on up and have a seat over to my left here. I'm going to reposition this podium, and we'll get started. Well, it's really exciting for us to get to have the Campbells with us. I thought by way of introduction, I knew Logan long before I knew Justin. I was a youth minister at the Old Hickory Church of Christ in Nashville, Tennessee, before we moved down here. And summer of 2014, every summer I got to hire 2 interns. I would always hire one male and one female. And Logan was one of my last interns at Old Hickory, and in fact, she helped me pack up my office as I prepared to move down here. So she was one of the few people up there who knew that I was kind of talking to you guys, before we made that transition. So
we figured it out.
Yeah.
He was being a little shady about it, and my co-intern and I were like, "Really? A vacation to Corpus Christi, Texas? What were you actually doing, Mark?"
Yeah.
And that's when we found out he was interviewing here.
Right. So they figured it out. But it worked out well. Glad to be down here. I like that you called me shady in front of everyone.
You're welcome.
So why don't you guys describe where it is that you met? Because that's kind of a neat story too. So tell about how it was that you guys connected.
You got it.
Oh, okay. I'm from Marysville, Ohio, and I grew up at Marysville Church of Christ. I had been living all over creation, it seemed like, so I had gone through a couple moves. I had just moved home from Chicago, and Justin was actually hired as the youth minister at Marysville Church of Christ. So when I came home from Chicago, everyone at my home church was like, "Have you met the new youth minister yet?" And I was like, "No, what's the big deal?" And at the time, I was working in retail, and so I wasn't able to be at church every Sunday. So months actually passed until our paths crossed. And finally someone dragged me up to him by the wrist and was like, "This is Justin." And then we met and hit it off, I guess. But yeah.
How long ago was that when you met?
We met in October of 2017.
Yeah.
We've been in a relationship for 13 months.
Great.
Got married 4 months ago.
Right. Yeah, so you guys are making several transitions at the same time. So the transition into being married, and then right after that, moving down to join us. So you're kind of in a new place, in a new setting, and going through all the transitions at once. So we are really happy to have you guys down here. I wanted to spend some time this morning letting them talk a little bit about themselves so we could all get to know them, and also about some stuff related to our vision for the future. I thought it might be helpful to all of us, though, to begin just by asking you, you really are new to King's Crossing, and obviously no church is perfect, but I'm hoping there are some things you could point out and say, there are some things we like about King's Crossing, and maybe here are some things that we're doing well. What would you say are some things you've enjoyed about your time here so far?
Yeah, whenever we came down to interview, when was that? July, August? Anyway, whenever it was. October, and time flies. No, but the worship was something that was really compelling to us. We like that the praise team is singing loudly, and I think that it seems to encourage the whole congregation to sing loud. And so Sunday mornings were life-giving for us, and we felt really connected to God and with the people around us. And that was a big deal for both of us. And then Logan loves Mark Adams. She thinks he's the best. And
A little shady, though.
Right. The jury's still out on my end. No, but his sermon was, really compelling to me, and I liked it a lot. So I think the feel and the energy that this congregation has, along with the eldership, and the volunteers that I talked to, all had the same mantra of excellence in everything. It was communicated from like 20 different people in that short weekend that we were here. And so I appreciated the general direction that the whole congregation seems to be on, and the eldership has a vision in this new building that's going to happen. It seems like we're a congregation that's going somewhere, and that was one of the most compelling parts for us.
Yeah, definitely. I would say worship is a big deal for me. Growing up in an a cappella congregation and then moving all over the place, going to different churches every couple years. When you find a congregation that worships joyfully and sings proudly, you notice right away. And it's a huge, huge part of my faith. So when we came and worship was so lovely, we were like, wow, I'm really impressed by that. And our church in Marysville is a little smaller, and it's definitely not as loud. So that was like, wow, right away. And just also how hospitable everyone has been to us, and just like asking us questions to get to know us in little ways. I've enjoyed like the climate and stuff. So everyone has been like, hey, we have like a grapefruit tree in our backyard. Do you want that? I'm like, a grapefruit tree? Yes, I want your grapefruit. So everyone has been just like so nice in bringing us things like that we definitely didn't have in Ohio.
Yeah, great. Well, glad to have you guys down here. I think something that's important in any position of leadership, it's my belief that if you want to lead others to be healthy, it's important that you yourself are healthy, right? It's important for each leader that we all try to work on our own relationship with God in order to be able to lead others to God. So I wanted each of you to talk a little bit about what is it that helps you be spiritually healthy? What is it that makes you feel close to God?
So I've really gotten into, I guess since college, so the last 6 years, into contemplative practices. So meditation, liturgical prayers, things that are already written out prayers. That's been really good for me because if you know the Enneagram, I'm a 7. Basically, I'm a big extrovert, and I like to be around people, and people is my main thing. So it's been really grounding for me to experience my times where I'm going to dedicate time to God outside of my natural appeal a little bit and be disciplined in that. That's been really life-giving to me, along with just education in general. I think I love to learn more about God. I really enjoy reading, the Bible, obviously, but then extra biblical things that have people teaching me better theology. And then worship. It's a big deal for both of us and the community that we get to share and experience. It's a big thing.
Definitely. For me, I would say the two biggest things. If you know the Enneagram, I'm a 4. So I don't feel super healthy spiritually, just being with people constantly. I do need a lot of time for self-reflection and things like that. And the way that I do that is to be connected with nature. I think for me, the biggest way and the easiest way for myself to be humbled and to make myself small again is to stand by a body of water or be on a mountain and things like that, that just make me realize creation and everything around me. So that's huge for me. And then also probably bigger than that is just mentorship. I grew up at a really, really wonderful congregation. And when I say they're my church family, I really mean that. And they raised me. My dad did not come to church with my mom and I. And so, the elders of my home congregation were all my dads. And I needed that. And I still feel very strongly about the importance of church family and mentorship. So I love getting to know people who are older than me. I love talking with kids that are younger than me, which is why it's kind of a freebie that he's a youth minister, because that does give me the chance to hang out with all the awesome teen girls, and just connecting with anyone older than me too is just so important, because I know I wouldn't be the Christian that I am without the people in my life that were listen, you're going to do this. You have all the power within you. It was handed to you. God put that in you, and you're going to use it. We're not going to watch you put it to waste. So watching people mentor me is really important.
Great. So as both of you have grown in your faith, you felt particularly called to work with young people. And you kind of commented on that just a little bit, but what is it that draws you to want to minister to younger people?
So when I was in youth group, the youth minister that I had, his first year of being the youth minister there was my 6th grade year. So just kind of my transition in was the same time as his, and he's still there today. He's a fantastic youth minister. His name's Luke Bauer. It's in Abilene, Texas. And I guess like a good way to put it quickly is I've seen a lot of life. A lot of things have happened in my life. I've experienced my parents being divorced multiple times, a lot of deaths in the family. And Luke, my youth minister, was terrific at asking me the questions that needed to be asked, helping me process what's really going on in my life. So there's a 9-hole par 3 course that has like lights so you can go golfing at night in Abilene. And he'd take me there, and about hole 3, he would just be like, all right, how is this divorce affecting your relationship with women? And I'm like, not well, But he was really good at digging deep in that. Since I was 14, I knew that I wanted to be a youth minister. I wanted to do that as well. I wanted to be able to walk with kids that are adolescents as they grow in this experience. And Luke was very, very empowering and he was a great advocate for me. He would stand up for me on my behalf multiple times that we've talked about now. That was like behind the scenes type stuff. And I feel very compelled to do that for adolescents today. I want to empower you. Like you are good, you're strong, you're adults almost, And so I guess I've known for 10 years now, this is what I wanted to do, and it feels awesome to be doing it.
I had an awesome youth ministry experience growing up, so that does play a small part in it, but I'm also one of the lucky people in the world that just kind of fell into youth ministry. I went to Lipscomb University in Nashville for 2 years. In my first year there, my Bible professor came to me and he was like, so there's this thing in a couple weeks and it's a youth ministry intern fair. And I was like, okay, tell me more. He was like, I think that you would really, really enjoy this. Do you have plans for summer? Are you going to go home to Ohio? And I didn't have any plans. So I was like, sure, I'll interview. And so basically you go and you interview with tons of churches. There's probably like 40, 50 churches there. And you kind of like speed date interview with different youth ministers, and they're looking to hire interns basically for their summer programs. And so I think we interviewed first. He was the first minister I talked to. So we talked for a couple minutes. He did ask me a couple questions, interview questions, and we just talked. And then a timer goes off, you move to the next table type situation. And you only interview with people that you're interested in going. So I think I interviewed with 5 churches. It ended, I walked back to my dorm, which is less than 5 minutes, and I walked through the door, and my phone rang, and it was Mark, and he was like, I want to offer you the job before anyone else calls you. Okay, cool. So I became a youth ministry intern, just like that, and spent my summer with Mark and Carolina, and just this wonderful crowd of people doing super fun things with kids, and we went all over the country, it felt like. But so I fell into that. I had a great time. Didn't think I would pursue it as a career or anything, and didn't think I would do it the next summer at all. And the next summer, my phone rang, and it was this guy from Houston, Texas. And he's like, hey, I heard that you did a really great job being a youth intern, and I really need a female intern for the summer. So I went and I interned in Houston, and so it just kind of kept happening to me, and I really loved it, but I didn't pursue it. And then I ended up marrying a youth minister, so again, I just kind of fell into it and just kept falling into it. So I'm kind of here for the long run now.
You almost fell over there, too.
Yeah.
He stepped on my shoe.
No, I did not.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about youth ministry philosophy. So you've got a lot of people here. You've got a lot of kids who are adolescents who are already kind of in your group. You've got some people who are maybe on the outskirts thinking about having a kid involved in your group. So when you think about a young person who is a part of your youth program, what are some things you want to see become true in that young person's life? So because they were part of King's Crossing's youth ministry program, what should become true in their life as a result of that?
Yeah, so I hold youth ministry to a high regard. So I expect and I hope that the kids that graduate out of the program will have a faith that is, you can call it their own, but it's rooted in orthodoxy, right? It's rooted in the Christian faith and the Christian history. It's a faith that they can claim, that they can verbalize, that they can communicate clearly. And I think that comes from a huge goal of mine is that they feel discipled, that the kids feel like I'm an advocate for them, and they recognize that I love them and that this church loves them. I want to see good communication and build a bridge really from the adolescents to the adults. The studies show that if you want an adolescent to stay in church after they leave high school, the most important factor is that they had
Intergenerational friendships.
Yeah, not interdenominational, but intergenerational relationships. Like, that's huge. And so that's something that matters a lot to me. That was a huge part of both of our growing ups. A family, actually, of one of my friends, like, she's my age, but her parents came to our wedding all the way in Ohio, and they live in Abilene still, and that was so cool. And I want that for y'all, and I want that for us as a whole congregation. So the fact I want them to have their own faith that they can communicate and for them to feel discipled and feel loved are the three main things for me.
Yeah, I would say a confidence moving forward. I am thankful that my congregation growing up kind of instilled an urgency within me that, like, the church family was always going to be there in those urgent times and in times where I was like, man, things aren't going right for me. I always felt this urgency in my heart to, like, get to church. Like in college when, we're all going to sleep in, we're not going to go, we're going to the 1 o'clock service, let's go. Because we all just kind of felt that tug within us because all my roommates and I were raised in the Church of Christ with really awesome church families. So I hope that we can just continue to instill that kind of continuous want to go to church and that you miss it. Like, on those Sundays where you don't go, it's like your week doesn't feel complete, and I want you to feel that. And then just that confidence about talking about hard things. My youth ministry growing up prepared me for that, and I think I had a really good idea of, like, kind of how to go into conversation about faith with people. And that doesn't mean that I'm great at it or that I know all the answers, but I was taught, like, if you don't know the answer, you can always phone a friend, like, refer people to people. You have all these great connections, use them. And so when I would go into conversations that were kind of difficult about faith, I'd be like, you know what, that's a great question, and I don't know, but I know someone that would love to talk about this with you, and I'll meet up with you. Like, I'll go with you to ask those questions because I want to know the answers too. So I hope that our students, when they graduate and go on to college, can have the confidence to go to their parents, go to youth ministry, go to everyone who works for the church or goes here and is able to be like, hey, like, I have this question or I want to talk about this, because being able to talk about faith is so important.
Yeah, great. So we've talked about, I think a big theme in both of your lives is the way that you had church families that really surrounded you, supported you, really were like a family to you. So I know you don't use the word church family lightly. Like, those words to you are very significant. And so we've talked some specifically about the youth program and what you want to see be true for our young people. Could you talk a little bit as you think about our church as a whole? Because I know that you share with me a concern that we don't want, there's a thing people talk about in youth ministry studies where they call it the one-eared Mickey Mouse syndrome. The idea that, like, you know, Mickey Mouse's ears are kind of off to the side. They say a lot of youth groups kind of become that, where they're kind of connected to the church, but not really part of the church. And that's something we talked a lot about as we were interviewing, is it's important to us that we want the young people to feel that this is their church family and they're part of this family. So as you think about our church family as a whole, if you were to make some wishes for our future, what are some things that you would wish for all of us?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mark. I think a wish for us as a congregation would be that primarily that we love God, you know, like that we are just a congregation that is trying our best individually to love God, which I think necessarily means that you're loving each other appropriately as well. And I think a big deal for me is that I want the community to be aware of our presence. I think that if we are the body of Christ, that people should recognize as hands and feet going places and doing things. So I'd really want people to experience King's Crossing Church of Christ doing things in the community. Those are probably the two biggest things. And then I think thirdly, it goes along with what we've already said, that we as a congregation, everybody feels a part of the congregation. It's very easy in a group this big for people to get marginalized or siloed off. I haven't seen that necessarily yet at all. Just a hope and a wish would be that every person feels not only connected, but a part of this family. That I think, and like a valued part of the family.
Yeah, I would say that going back to the intergenerational relationships is huge for me. At our old church in Ohio, we were able to be a part of the young adults ministry. And that ministry was kind of pushed to the wayside for years because all these kids like me who grew up in that youth group would go off to college and then come home, and then they were just kind of expected to be part of the congregation. And it was this really weird experience where we were invited to like ladies' fellowship parties and things like that. And it was like going to a sleepover with your mom and all her friends and like your grandma. But it was weird because it was separated like that. Like the older women would look at me and like want to know like things about like my young life, and it made us like not want to go because we were like, every time we're there, it's just kind of this weird, like, you're young, like I'll talk to you about young things, but it was like we didn't know what to talk about. And so we decided we want to go to those things, but we just don't want it to be weird. Like we don't want it to seem like we're there as our mom's daughters. We want to go as adult women because they were still viewing us like we were the little girls that they saw growing up in the church. And so we got together and we were like, what if we can kind of start to fellowship, but with everyone, not just the women, to see if we can bridge some of those gaps. And so we came up with doing Fifth Sunday potlucks. And at these potlucks, we forced people, forced to sit with people that they don't normally sit with. And you had to have people at your table that were not in your age demographic. And we actually did questions over a microphone, like that we printed out on the table that you had to ask people at your table to get to know them. And we did themed food. And so for the first one to kick off, we did like generational food. So everyone bring food from like your favorite food from when you were a kid, because obviously that's going to be super different from a 4-year-old today and a 4-year-old in 1960. Totally different. So all these people brought all these different foods, and we got to talk about it, and then it just kind of started to come together like that, and it was really beautiful. And that made me have this urge to know all of the older people in my congregation, but also start meeting all those little ones that I have no reason to be connected to. So just things like that I love. So I hope that I can get to know all the generations.
Well, in speaking with both of you in the interview process, it was encouraging to me to hear you both, because you're both, I perceive you both to be very relational people. And I think that's kind of come through a lot, hasn't it? I mean, relationships are important. And that's something I've valued a lot when people visit King's Crossing and they'll say, it does feel like a family here, or people went out of their way to walk around the aisle and say hello to me. So those are some values that I think we share and that we would love to continue growing in. So I really appreciate you guys making time to talk to me up here this morning and to share with us a little bit about your vision. And would you just join me in appreciating them for doing that this morning? Our scripture reading for today came from Matthew chapter 18. And I'm just thinking about verse 5, which reads, "And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." I hope for you this has been an uplifting morning. I think it's always great to think about the importance of the next generation, that what we're doing as Christians is that we're always in the business of trying to pass the torch, hand on the message to the next generation, that in this chain of faith that goes back now thousands of years, we want to be a strong link in that chain so that when we stand before God, God can look at us and say, well done, King's Crossing, well done to each of us, that we've done our part to be faithful to that message. So, as always, we like to extend an invitation where if there's someone with a special need or prayer request, or if there's just something we could do this morning to be a source of encouragement to you, we would invite you, if you'd like, to come forward to the front and talk to us as together we stand and sing this song.